There we go. Okay, hello, good morning. My name is Raul Martinez. Welcome to the Blackletter Brunch. Today is November 23rd, and our guest today is Louise Grunewald, and she's going to be talking about her many calligraphy projects and printing and everything. So why don't you tell us a little more about that, Louise?
Okay. So, yeah, I am going to be showing I'm titling this Cards Cutout Collage Improvisation. Actually, this talk was inspired, and I'm so happy to see Anna and Helena here because they actually inspired me to think of something to present. Uh, each of them gave presentations on some of their projects. And so that's partly what spawned this idea that I presented to Raul. And then there'll be some miscellaneous other things to go. So I will start by sharing my screen and going to, whoops. Okay, there we go. Are you seeing a full screen of my title?
Yes, yeah, it's in full screen mode. Yeah.
Good. Okay. So this presentation will be in parts according to these little headlines, and I will go ahead and start here with permission. I assumed was granted. I'm using this picture of Anna's piece from the Calligraphia show, and also it was published in the recent Alphabet. And when Anna showed me this piece, I was really inspired by her cutout letters. And I thought they were just so much fun and decided to make use of them in some much less sophisticated ways, but they were inspired. And Helena had her beautiful book also, and both of them gave presentations on these, which was also in Calligraphia and published in Alphabet with her cutout shapes that I marvel at and still marvel at because of the intricacy of what she does. But these two women inspired my segues into my little projects. So the first ones were cards. And many of you know that for years I was a commercial greeting card designer. And I just can't help myself. I love making cards for all sorts of things. And so I had some birthdays of family members coming up, and I decided to play with some cutout letters. And so I told Anna, I said, I'm so excited. I'm doing these cards and you inspired me. So this one I started with an automatic pen and Bister inks and just did these little Neuland letters that then I made um, stencils of so that I could do what I wanted, which was splatter around the stencils to give myself a background, and then take the Neuland letters and put them on top so they had these little drop shadows. And you can see here the stenciled letters got all splattered up. And I was thinking I was going to do something with those, but I actually never did. And here's how the card came out, which was just really fun to give to someone. People love their names. This was for my husband. And as Anna did in her piece, I added these little squares because it looked too blah without them. So here was his card. My young grandnephew turned 12, so I did his card in more primary colors, and he thought that was really cool because I do their names because they love their names done. So I guess he's got it on his door now, which is fun. My little grandnephew in Germany uh, is turning 9, and I decided for this one I would use those Coliro colors, those pearl colors, which is again something Helena introduced in her her talk, um, one of her talks anyway. And so I used a flat brush and just did the letters that way with multicolors. And when I did those letters, I wanted them to be shiny, which they are, but I realized that they'd show up better on a black background. So I made some shapes for those letters to go on and then laid the letters on there. He is half South African, so he has a very South African name. Langa Grunewald, what a name. So here is his card, which actually this was my favorite one because of the way the letters popped so much. So that was my little segue into greeting card design courtesy Anna. So now we come to cutouts. And like I said, I have don't have the skill or the patience to do what Helena did, but I did work on a book that I wanted to have the cutout shapes turn over one another. And it's a challenge when you're making cutouts to turn on a book and both sides have to work. So this is what the page did, um, turning from a really colorful side, but I wanted it to just be plain white against the left side. So that was one of the pages of my book. And this was another one inspired by cutouts. I'll show more of this book later. It's a book I call Improvisation, which is why there's that in the title. So here's the other side of that page. So we were talking about collage when Anna gave her presentation and spoke more about her experience with that. And I am not the kind of collage artist that covers a page with collage elements, but I do like them as accents. So I wanted to show a few things that I did that way. This is a book that I made a while ago, and the collage pieces are these red cutout shapes that I used by painting that vermilion ink that many of us know, to use the orange red shapes to place along with the black. With doing this, I was able to make the design and add the red with making it completely overlap the black and the gray. So the collage turned out to be a good way to do that. And again, it's very simple collage, but it's, in my view, it's still collage. So this book was about balance, and one definition of balance, according to the New Oxford American Dictionary, is, quote, a condition in which different elements are equal or in the correct proportions. So what does it mean to seek balance? Do we strike a balance, weigh the balance, tip the balance? In art, we balance the elements. In life, we balance priorities, seeking, finding, losing, and finding again, which, even though I wrote it, I find it's good advice for myself and was good to go back to. And here was my colophon, which is something I always do in my work to explain what materials I used. And so there was Sumi ink, vermilion ink, collage, Reed's BMK paper, and Arches cover paper. And it's a drum leaf structure. And I just wanted to mention during this talk, if anybody wants to say something or something doesn't sound clear, please interrupt me. I don't want to wait till the end because I'd rather you focus on the question that relates to the slide you see. So please feel free to interrupt. Someone raised their hand.
John Prestiani.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I do have a question. Thank
Okay.
you. How are you attaching your cutouts? And also on the greeting card that you showed, with the Neuland cutout. How did you attach those to the underlying surface?
You know what I use that I found really works well, and I'll at the end of the talk, if I'm spotlighted, I'll show you this. I use a double stick archival tape because for small pieces like this, I can lay it down on the piece, I can cut around it and lay it down. There's no mess, there's no glue, and I used that for the cards and for this. It's a really kind of neat and clean way to work. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, the reason I asked was because if you were using a water-based glue, I was just wondering if there was a problem with buckling the paper, but I am familiar with that type of tape, which
Yes.
doesn't cause any change to the underlying paper.
Right. And that's exactly why I use it because I have tried other things and then they buckle and then I'm unhappy. In the case of these pieces on this book and on those cards, the paper was thick enough that glue would have worked, but it might have smushed out, and then smeared the watercolor underneath. So I just find that this technique works really well. I also use it as the glue for my drum leaf books. When I put glue on like one side, Suzanne Moore showed me you just put your glue on here and leave the top and bottom open. And I use archival tape for that because again, it's not messy. So, okay.
Um,
Oh, go
Louise,
ahead. Yes.
Carl Roars had a question. He
Okay,
wanted,
Carl. Yes. Carl?
I, I
You
think you're muted, Carl.
to save bandwidth. My question was, I didn't know you were a card artist. And was it for that company in Colorado Springs or were you freelance?
My card company was called Lean and Tree, and they're based in Boulder, Colorado. And it was interesting. I started working for them in 1985 because I had this dream forever of being a greeting card artist and had sent out samples all over and got rejected. But one day I had done a piece that I had printed myself, and the art director from that company was in a friend's studio, asked who did it, and called me up and started giving me assignments. And I worked for them from about 85 through about the early 2000s. Yeah, I did thousands of cards.
Thousands.
Yes, and it was interesting because they were one of the companies that were very late into computers. So in addition to designing my own background watercolors and then putting calligraphy on them, I was also given paintings that then I would write quotes for. And I did like 100 of those a month. I mean,
Wow.
it was great because they paid really well. They paid royalties, and I got to give up doing advertising. So it was a dream job for a calligrapher, because they called themselves a fine art greeting card company. So they didn't want to use typefaces. They wanted hand lettering and original paintings. So it was great.
Great. Thank you.
Carl, you didn't know that about me. Okay. Well, I'll send you a card one day.
Cards from you, but not virtual. Thank you.
You're welcome. Margaret has her hand raised.
I did. It's really a silly question. What is drumleaf binding? I'm not really a bookbinder, so
Oh, okay.
you
I'll
could
go
do a
back.
simple
Let me
explanation
go.
at some point would
Yeah,
be grateful.
I'm trying to go back to let's see, let me go back here. Okay, you can see where the spine is. So this fold, this page is glued to the back of the previous page, and this one is glued to the next one. So it's a glued rather or taped rather
Oh,
than sewn binding.
right,
The
I get you.
pages sit in back to back.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. And here's a little accordion book that started out actually in a class with Yukimi, and you can kind of recognize what we would do with Yukimi. And I decided to add some acrylic and collage elements that, in this case, I painted rice paper with acrylic paint, and then I attached that to the book. And then the back side of the book was black, so my collage elements had to be thicker paper. But it was a fun little playbook, and just as a this is not, oh, I don't know, this is not something that you do if you were sending it to a big show. But what I did to make the book stand up is, as a printmaker, I often use plexiglass as a basis for making mono prints. And I cut a piece of plexiglass and laid it on the cover, and I used that archival tape to just stick it to the cover so I could use the design as the cover. And it kind of worked for a fun little book like that. Made it stand up. And also I had these ties so you could hang it as well. Okay. Now these are Amity Parks papers done as collage accents, and many of you know her papers that she paints with Bister inks on very thin rice paper. And John, just to answer your other question about glue, in this case, I didn't use the archival tape. I used a Japanese Yamamoto glue, and it's all written in Japanese, but a friend of mine told me about it, and I use a squeegee to kind of squeegee it on the back of the paper, and then stick it down. And these papers are so thin that it works really well, and it doesn't buckle them. I kind of burnish them afterwards. And Amity uses matte medium, but I found that buckled for me. So the colors here are Bister inks, and in the little counter spaces, and then I used the squares with her papers. I fell in love with her papers. So here's another example of her papers on a piece I did, a detail. And I love the translucency of her papers. So like I said, not being a strict collage person, I've been really having fun playing with this. This is a little monoprint that I did, and in order to make it more interesting, I added 2 little pieces of collage, just as accents. Okay, another kind of collage that I use as a printmaker. In printmaking, collage is called shin collé. And what you do there is, so here's a printing plate that was inked with black and several colors. And when the ink was wet, I laid pieces of, in this case, this was Japanese silk. I have a friend that lived in Japan, and she has all these scraps of kimono silk that she hands over. And I laid the silk onto the plate, spritzed it with water, and sprinkled wheat paste with a very fine, I've made a shaker of wheat paste that's really, really fine, shaking it on. And then when the paper is laid on that, it pretty much glues the silk to the paper, and also allows the ink from the plate to penetrate the silk. And this was another one. This was the same base plate, but with a little bit different coloring and some different pieces of silk. And I find this a real satisfying way to sometimes add accent to a print. I see Anna's hand raised there.
Yeah, Louise, I'm curious about, you said you sprinkled the wheat paste on the silk or on the plate.
On the silk. Yeah.
Or on the silk. I've
Yeah,
always like made the wheat paste, so
oh, it's dry. I'm sorry.
I've never seen
it's dried, it's the dried paste in a like, it's actually a flour shaker that I put a piece of cheesecloth over. So when I shake it down, the powder comes out really, really fine, and I can pretty much aim it where I want it to. And then if I spritz a little water on it, it becomes
it
paste.
reconstitutes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then the pressure of the press shoves it into the paper.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome. This was another example of that same Shinkolei process where the background is a printing plate that was inked as like a split fountain. And then I had been working with a friend doing eco dyeing, and we eco dyed some plants onto silk, very transparent silk. And these became illustrations in a book I made later. But I loved the way the printing ink could come through this transparent silk. And as you can see, it's the same background plate for each of these pieces, just done in little different colors. Okay.
Excuse me, Louise.
Yes.
KMS had a question.
Oh, okay.
Well, I put my hand down because it passed me by, but my
Oh,
dad
okay.
used to buy only the leaning, uh, the leaning, whatever cards he used to make. All of the cards we got from him for years were just from Leaning Tree. He
Oh,
loved them.
thank you.
Yeah,
I had quite a run with them because usually card lines don't last that long, but man, they kept me busy for over
yeah,
20 years. Yeah. Well, that's
yeah,
fun to know. It was kind of a fun job because in our troubled world, the even though some of the the poetry was kind of corny, at least it was uplifting, and that made me feel good. So,
it was perfect.
thank you. Okay. Now, this is a different kind of collage that some of you may have done or may want to try. And this is taking me back a few years because this is something I was doing probably in the early 2000s. I had a technique that I learned from a painter where you would do a underpainting in acrylic, okay? And because acrylic doesn't bleed once it's dry, you'd make it very intensely bright, because then what you would do is lay a complete sheet of translucent rice paper over that acrylic, and you would paint onto it with acrylic matte medium that was somewhat diluted, so that you were softening your background painting a little bit, but you were giving it this texture. So you could see the rice paper marks here, kind of the wrinkles that it creates, which was something I really liked in that case. And the beauty of this technique to me, and this is why I think calligraphers would enjoy it, you have to do it on either a watercolor board or like a 300-pound weight watercolor paper, because you don't want things to buck, the paper to wrinkle. But what's so cool about it is you can then add some paint, like I added some gouache to the painting with a flat brush, some little highlights. But when you letter on it, and I did this with a brush and gouache, if you make a mistake, you can wipe it off because the acrylic has sealed everything up. So it's very forgiving. And I just was having a great time with that for quite a few years. It was one of my main ways of working. This is another one. Again, a really bright underpainting. And you can see the little flecks of rice paper, the little gold flecks of that, and the wrinkles. But then again, once this was all dry and set, I could letter in gouache, which worked really well on this surface. And it really only worked for brush because I can't imagine using a pen for this. And this kind of lettering for me was somewhat tedious, although I enjoyed it, because I would letter it kind of quickly, or in a rhythm, but then I'd have to go back and build it up and build it up and build it up to get it to be, like in this case, really white on the background. Here was another one. This one was done right after 9/11, and I was living in New Mexico, and my studio looked out over the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, and the moon was rising in the sky at that point, and I was so sad. And so I wrote this poem about my heart breaking, and you can read it. I simply must take delight in the first snow on the high peaks, the rustle of yellow leaves at my feet, the moon rising in the cerulean sky. I must feel wonder. And at that time, I did quite a few very dark pieces as well, but I really wanted to do something to lift my spirits. So this was done in that same technique with a really bright acrylic underpainting and the rice paper over it, and then the lettering. So that same year, so you can see this was a long time ago, 9/11 was in 2001. That whole year I was inspired to write each season about wonder. And each season I started with the same part of the poem that I had written and ended with it about my heart breaks and then I must feel wonder. But in the middle, I wrote about, like in this case, it was fall, the one I just read. And here what I did was a little take on that same technique where I took a piece of rice paper and tore it into a shape. I wanted the shape of the mountains and then, like the aspen trees down below, whatever. And I painted the rice paper with acrylic paint. And that was a little bit of a trick because it really wanted to curl as I was painting it. And I had to also keep it from sticking to the surface I was using. And once that dried, I used matte medium to attach the rice paper to a piece of watercolor paper. And then once that dried, I did my lettering in gouache again. And so here, that was fall. This is winter. So once again, I'm talking at this point about new snow, and there were shooting stars I could see back there in El Rito. We had such dark night skies. And I still wanted to start each page with the same beginning and the same ending, but have a different quote for each season. This was spring. And again, you can see the colors are changing with each one. And this was summer. And I'll never forget this because I wrote the middle part of this poem when I was in Minnesota teaching at the conference at, oh God, Saint, help me, the Minnesota Calligraphy Conference, St. John's. And we used to go swim in the lake after class because they had these beautiful lakes. And so I wrote this. And then I decided once that they were in frames for a while, and then I decided a good way to store work is to put it into a book. So I made a book. And you could see here how they were inserted into a book that I made a little frame about for each piece. All right, now work from the past year. I ran into this quote somewhere, and it speaks to me because it's a way that I like to work, and it seems to be a way that I have been working in the past year. I've been sort of giving myself, with one exception, myself assignments. So I find that sometimes if I just stop judging it or thinking where it's going, I can have a lot more fun. So that's how I've been working. And what happened in the fall of 2024, which would be about a year ago now, a colleague of mine who is a very well-known textile artist, via Heather Martinez, who is always coming up with teaching ideas, offered a class with stitching on paper. And Heather had this idea that it would be great for calligraphers. So Heather organized this class, and I decided, what the heck, I'll take it, it'll be fun. So I had this painting, and this was another one of the ones I did when Yukimi and Mike Gold and Massimo and Cora Pearl and Amity did a class called Liberated Line. This Yukimi had us do exercises like this, and I had done this sort of painting based on her exercises, but it kind of looked, I liked it, but I sort of thought, well, it's a little blah. I need to do something. So when I took this stitching class, I thought I had nothing to lose by practicing on this painting. So I end up flipping it vertical and using these different stitches to fill in some of the spaces. And these are called French knots. For many of you probably do this and know how to do it. And this is a seed stitch. French knots took me forever to learn, and I just figured that what the heck, I'll just, if I ruin this thing, it doesn't matter. And then this is what I ended up with. And I also added collage pieces by accident because right here, I ripped the paper, and it's very easy to do when you're stitching on paper. This was Arches Tex Wove. So I thought, well, what the heck? I'll just add some collage elements. So I ended up with something I liked quite well. And another thanks to Mike Gold, who was teaching at that point a class on making banners. I learned about these hanging things that have magnets in them so you can clip your piece into these hanging things, and then you don't have to deal with framing, which I was totally tired of. This was another one. This is the alphabet, starting with A, B, C, D, E, all the way down with little French knots going through the piece. This one does not have lettering, but I was having so much fun with this. First of all, the idea of making banners, and secondly, just doing whatever I could with stitching. I was using Bister inks for my backgrounds, and being a person that loves rivers, I did the river rocks and found that I could imitate the bubbles of water swirling around rocks with French knots. And this was funny because um, I was so happy that I was making so many of these that I actually included them in a show I participated in. And this was the most popular piece. I ended up making 3 more along the same lines because I sold the one that people wanted. So I just took commissions and made some more. Okay, here's one with lettering. Again, Bister ink background. And at this point, I wanted to make some letters out of stitching. And of course, there had to be an alphabet piece. And here's a detail of how I did the letters on that, using the French knots and the seed stitches. So that was my little segue into another way of working that I hadn't expected. And then this was the one that was the assignment. I'm involved with a little gallery here in Durango called Studio And, as in studio with an ampersand after it. And it's run by a group of younger artists. They started out 15 years ago when they were all in their 20s and 30s. And they have this small gallery and they do really, really fun exhibits. So the owner of the gallery came to 35 artists. He invited 35 artists and gave them each one line from the Bob Dylan song, Visions of Johanna. And we were asked to interpret that line any way we wanted to. And so here were 35 artists with many different disciplines. We had sculptors, we had ceramicists, we had textile artists, we had painters, we had printmakers. Well, I was the only calligrapher, and this was my line. And I was looking at that and going, oh man. I listened to the song, I kind of understand what the song's about, but in many ways, even though I love Dylan, some of his things I don't understand completely. So my idea was, okay, I'm a calligrapher, but I am not going to do a piece with this quote and then some images of skeleton keys or rain or something. So I decided to go abstract with it and do what they call now a CMYK or legible lettering. And this is what I came up with. So I did lots of tries for this, but for this one, which was the finished one, I was writing visions of Johanna first in this black with an automatic pen. And that was just my starting point. I was just scribbling this out. I did this on a lot of pieces of paper to see where it would go. Then I'm trying to remember the sequence, but I certainly added some a wash of bistre and a circular shape and was starting to compose the piece. And then, of course, I was thinking, oh, this is where I can use Amity's papers to accent this and finish the design. So you can see the collage pieces I used of her papers that I felt were adding to the integrity of the design. Actually, this is on black, but there was a section here that was all black too in the piece, and some graphite. Well, I wrote out the whole text in the background across the wash of bistre ink, and it just looked really wimpy because I had done it with really a thin, like just a monoline tool. So what I decided to do was write the title and go over the thing with the title. So I'm going to outline it here. So VISIONS, visions of JOHANNA, visions of Johanna. Again, to anyone, not legible, but it was my way of finishing up the design in a way that made it hold together. And I really love playing like this, and I love lettering in graphite too. So here's a close-up of how that went over the background scribbles. All right. Improvisation. That was one of the words in my title. Okay. I love improvising. So we're back to playing now, but we're still contemplating visions of Johanna. And I did a pile of things before I came up with my final result. And this was one of them. And you can see sort of if you're I don't know if people see it the way I can see perfectly. It says visions of Johanna, but it's pretty obscure. And I did this one and I did this one, both with visions of Johanna and some bistre colors and walnut colors. Well, I really liked these two pieces, but they didn't suit the show to my mind. I don't know. I liked the designs, but I didn't know where I'd fit anything else in them. And so what I decided to do was tear up the pages to make a book. So you can see here's the cover, and that's part of those paintings. And this is one of those sewn structures that anyone that studied with Lori Doctor learned that from her. So here you can see that the signatures, the outside pages of the signatures are the painting, which makes kind of a nice spread. And then here's a view of just one of the spreads, which really worked quite well. And it made me happy because I still was using those pieces I liked. I did add a collage element and a cutout shape to that as well. So this book had those signature pages, but it was full of blank paper. So there were like 5 signatures or 4, 5 or 4. And then it was like, well, what am I going to do? And so in the spirit of just wanting to play, I decided to improvise. So I wrote this word and titled the book Improvisation and added some Amity collage elements to this title page. And what I did over the course of, I don't know, not every single day, but many days, I'd just open a spread and I'd let whatever wanted to happen happen. I didn't have an intention that the book had to, like, one page totally relate to the next. They were all very different. But my bottom line rule was that I was going to stick with a pretty limited color scheme. I was using Bister inks in these earthy tones, and that the word improvisation, legible or illegible, had to be included in each spread. So this one was inspired by that kind of lettering I did for the Johanna piece. So that was my spread for this one. This one, with colored pencil, the word is there, Improvbisation, but again, not immediately legible, but designed, and a cutout shape. So I'm kind of overlapping because I have, cutouts and collage and different things in here. And the next page, I have that word done in graphite and then covered with white acrylic paint that I squeezed out of a fine liner. So this one, you can read the word. And here I have my accent piece of collage, and I'm just going to go back because that was the cutout page that then this accent piece focused on. And here was the cutout. So sometimes what happened is, and I gave myself permission for this. I thought, if I screw up, I don't really care because I'm not doing this for anybody else. I'm doing it to do it. I'm doing it to explore. And in this case, I really screwed up the writing on the left-hand side. So once again, collage served as a wonderful way to cover up what looked like a big mess and come up with this page. But the word was in there. And here's the word written backwards is in there with Bister inks. And the little squares are Amity's collage papers. Well, here you can read it. And the black shapes are collage papers. Here you can't read it, but it's there. And this was an easy solution. This harkens back to my greeting card days when I was doing multicolored lettering daily. And I think by the end, I was just ready to do something simple. So this was the last page, and I can obviously read it. I'm sure you can too. And another improvisation was a little book that I started. I made the structure in a workshop in Taos with Lori Doctor, but I had to leave the workshop early due to unforeseen circumstances. So I came home with basically the outer structure, but blank pages. So I had the opportunity to not follow directions and make this book something just that I wanted to make it. So I decided with this book to use stitching as an element in the book. And this kind of goes through pretty fast, but I don't know how to pause it. So I used cutouts and stitching throughout this book. Some of the stitches had words, some of them didn't. And it was a trick to figure out which cutout overlapped which next piece so that they made sense. So from page to page, you can cut out from one page, but when it overlaps to the next one, you want to have it overlap to something that is also interesting. And then it's always nice to have a closure for a book. And when I got home, I had I was inspired to make one more book of that structure and decided to go to an opposite color scheme. So this book is, there's my little spine. This book is called Blue Notes. And it was about the color blue. And with the pages, I started by just using a mixture of watercolor and Bister inks and making the blue washes, just designing them on the page. That was the first step. The gestural marks came later and were done with a fine liner and acrylic, and the cutouts also came later. And I had the same challenge of making each cutout open to something that was interesting to both spreads. So those gestural marks that I added are actually words, but you can't read them. There's my little colophon at the end. And I guess because I like things to make sense sometimes, I decided in the colophon to explain myself. So the book was about the color blue and some of the words that are associated with it. These colors are green blue, so I've included works that apply to green as well. So each spread contains one or more illegible word that describes a characteristic of blue or green. This sewn 3-signature book is painted with both acrylic and transparent watercolor pigments on Reeves BFK paper. And then I just felt like I really wanted to do this, so I made an index to each page and what that illegible word was. So these were words I thought of myself or I looked up about the color blue. So somehow that seemed appropriate to have it make sense to people that might wonder about this illegible writing that we do these days. Okay, so we're coming to the end here, and this is a little bit of a preview that I'm going to be doing an article. Carl and I talked about this. I'm going to do an article for Alphabet one of these days soon, Carl, about a man named Gustav Baumann. Gustav Baumann was well known in New Mexico as a printmaker. This is an example of one of his colorful woodcuts that he did when he lived in Santa Fe around 1917. He was born in the late 1800s, and he moved from Germany, where he was born, and he came to the Midwest and lived in Indiana, I believe it was, for years as a graphic designer. And then he moved to New Mexico, and at that point he became more of a fine artist, involved with artists that were there were a whole group of people in the early 1900s in New Mexico that had like artist colonies, and it probably would have been really cool to live there at that time. So he began doing these beautiful wood blocks. So each color in this print is represented by a separate block of wood. Here is another piece of his that he did based on the pictographs on the walls in the canyons of New Mexico. And he titles this Past History. So he's mainly known for these amazing prints. And when I moved to New Mexico in the late 90s and became aware of him, he just became one of my heroes. Well, what happened was, or is happening, I should say right now, is that there is an exhibit. If anybody's going to Santa Fe between now and the end of December, you must see this. So Tom Leach, he used to run the Palace Press at the Palace of the Governors in Santa Fe, and Anna knows him. I don't know if anybody else in this room would know of Tom, but he's an amazing letterpress printer, book artist, paper maker, and he curated or he co-curated this show at the New Mexico Museum of Art. And it's 3 different galleries filled with Bauman's work. So Tom, I was having dinner with Tom and his wife, and he says, I think calligraphers should know about Gustav Bauman because he did all this lettering. So what he did, in addition to a whole slew of greeting cards he did over the years, was create woodblock images that had text. And of course, these aren't great examples of calligraphy per se, but when you think about it, they all had to be hand carved, and they all had to be hand carved backwards because they were going to be printed. So he did these very whimsical, wonderful greeting cards, and there's a whole section of the exhibit that is just about his cards. Then he did other pieces, and when you picture this as a series of wood blocks with different colors, it's just amazing. And then, of course, he has this lettering across the top. Andrea, what does that say?
So it tells you the location. That's Schmalzturm, Landsberg am Lech. Schmalzturm means that's the name of the tower.
Mm-hmm.
Turm is tower. And
Yes.
Landsberg is the name of the town. And am Lech means at the river Lech.
Okay. Thank you, because I knew Turm was tower, but I was having trouble with the rest of it. So
I mean, the Schmalz is a funny thing because Schmalz is something to eat. It's
yeah.
it's grease. Yeah, right. Yeah. So
Chicken
it's a
fat.
funny name.
Yeah, and also my German father used to sometimes just say Schmalz was just kind of like schmal. It was sort of I
Yeah.
don't know, he used that term like it was just nothing or something. I don't know. So that's interesting that that's the name of the tower, but that's what it is. So when Bauman lived in the Midwest, he edited and hand printed a magazine or whatever. Yeah, it was a magazine. And you can see here, 1909 is when he did this. So he was obviously very interested in letters. And this is one of his mastheads that he did, again, cut in wood. This was another one.
Louise, this is a really famous magazine. It went on for years and years. He was in charge of it all that time, or just for a period?
That's a good question. I think he was in charge of it. Gosh, I will have to read up on that since I'm writing this article. Um, so you know about this.
Well, I have a fantastic book that compiled all the highlights of the typography for this magazine over.
Wow.
I'll have to look, but I think it's decades, and it's filled with tremendous eccentric typefaces from the late 19th century. And
Wow.
so, I've never read it. I just go in and look at the letters, but
Yeah.
I'll have to take a look at this as we get going on the article.
Yeah, that's great. It's any more information would be great.
This book is
Um,
amazing, totally amazing. Out of print
cool.
now, but really wonderful. We'll talk
Yeah.
more about that later.
Okay, cool. Well, if this was 1909, and when you look it up, you'll find out how long it went. I see Michael Starkman has raised a hand. Go ahead, Michael.
Sorry. The lettering artist and illustrator Will Bradley was also very involved with the inland printer.
Okay. I don't know that name. Carl might.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, I'm collecting more information now. 'Cause.
Well, I think this, bringing in the inland printer, widens the article
Yeah.
because there's lots of people that were involved in, yeah, it's a huge subject. So
Cool. Well, like Tom said, calligraphers and typographers and other people, like people like you, Carl, and apparently Michael as well, would find this interesting. Yeah.
yes.
So here was when he lived in New Mexico. This was a group of artists that were in Santa Fe and Taos. You can see at the bottom it says an amiable publication, entirely the work of writers and artists of the Southwest. So these guys all hung out together and did all these different things. And this was called Koshare, however you pronounce it. And this was his woodblock to symbolize that. So I would imagine this was a much simpler hand printed publication. I'll have to look up more about that. Here is the block for the green part of the print, and here is the block for the black, and you can see how he made the character Koshare. Rudolph Koch comes to mind, of course, because of all his carving in wood. And I'm closing with this. This was just fun. In the show, he had some paintings, and this was just a whimsical alphabet thing he did with A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It was just made me smile. It was just a funny little painting that he did about the alphabet. So he according to Tom, he was very interested in that as well as printing, and that's so, like I said, if you do go to Santa Fe between now and the end of December, go see it. It's quite an exhibit. And that's it. And thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time to look at this. I appreciate your attention or whatever.
Oh, wouldn't have missed it for anything.
Um,
Wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Louise,
Well, it was fun to put together. I have to say that I don't know if this should be recorded, but in September, I had a hip replacement and I'm doing great. I'm hiking, I'm back, it's all good. However, for almost 2 months, I really haven't been productive in the studio. And some of you, I think, know how it is after you've had this incredible, either a show or you've been really productive, and all of a sudden you're going, oh, here's all this blank paper, and what am I gonna do? And what do I do? And all this. And so when I made this, I realized, well, I've done a few things over the last year and it'll come back. So it was really fun to put it together. And I thank you all for your interest and your questions. That makes it interesting to me as well.
Louise, thank
Yes.
you for your shout out, but I think you have your own spark and you just generate ideas out of the
Oh,
ether. So, but it was a wonderful presentation. Thank
oh,
you.
Anna, you are so kind.
It's true.
Louise,
Yeah.
Janet Martorello had a question about
Yes.
the magnetic strips, the little wooden magnetic strips for banners.
Oh,
Where
yeah.
do you get
Yeah,
those?
they're just called poster hangers, and you get them on Amazon, and they're made of lovely wood, but they're they're not very expensive. And what they each strip has a magnet. They have magnets in between the strips, so it clamps the piece of paper on the top and the bottom, and it's such a relief to show work that way. It's after so much framing that I always do myself that I'm so tired of. So yeah, look it up on, I think I don't know the name. There's one company I like and I can't remember the name, but you'll find them. I mean, unless you're averse to using Amazon, which sometimes we have to do, it's that's what it is.
You're so creative.
We
Thank you
just
so much.
said, so in Germany, they are available at IKEA
Oh, okay.
also. So maybe next time you have a look.
Okay. I also wanted to point out something. I don't know if you can see. I don't know if I'm showing. Am I showing on full screen or what?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Uh,
So
yeah.
this is the glue that it's that Japanese glue, and this is like those color shapers. And this is if you put a little bit of this glue on one of these and you smear it on the back of a thin piece like those Amity papers, it works really well. And then you just kind of burnish it and it doesn't squish or get messy. I like it a lot better than matte medium. And this is the 3M tape that's just it comes with a sort of a paper backing and then it's sticky and you stick it on and then you peel off the paper. And what you can do is just lay your collage piece down on a cutting board. And then if the tape is bigger than the collage piece, you just use a scalpel and cut around it. And so then it makes a nice clean seal. It's very slick. So Dr. Sarah Lewis has raised her hand.
Above me, that's me, Sarah Cortez. I just had a question about those beautiful background washes, and you mentioned that you used some watercolors and also some kind of ink. And I was wondering, what was that kind of ink?
Oh, on the blue book, are you
Yes.
talking about? Yeah, I used some liquid acrylic ink, which I diluted some. That was something Yukimi introduced, and I generally find those inks to be too garish for my taste. But if I water them down or I mix them or I add walnut to them or I add watercolor to them, I can get um, kind of the colors I want. So the nice thing about acrylic in the sense is that once it's down, anything you do over it isn't going to lift, like watercolor can smear again if you get it wet, but that stuff stays pretty stuck, even if you add watercolor to it. So, and there's many brands of that kind of ink.
That's true. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Was it also Bister ink? Wondering?
Yes, I use Bister. I really like Bister. It's interesting. I bought it because everybody was buying it. And I didn't use it for a long time. And then I realized that I started making some books and I used it in conjunction with some transparent watercolors because I found, like, for example, their blue is so green. But if I threw a little phthalo blue watercolor into that wash, it would make a nice green blue. So I kind of mix a little bit of watercolor in if I want to punch up the Bister colors, but I'm kind of getting to like that earthy look. Maybe it's because I'm getting older or something. I don't know, but it just I like it. Margaret had
It was just a question about that Japanese glue because you were waving it about in front of them.
I
couldn't
can't
see what it was.
There you are. And here, so if I speak, I don't know, it's called Yamato.
Mm-hmm.
And everything else is in Japanese.
Oh, right. Yeah, I get you.
It's okay. Yamato W100 Starp Nori Washi Glue.
Oh, right.
And my friend that recommended it to me uses a lot of washi papers that she glues with it. So I decided to try it and it's nice.
I've got some washi paper that I bought in Japan. Yeah. It's just that I haven't the faintest idea where it is. It's in there somewhere in that plant chest, but there's still hidden depths that I've not plumbed yet, even after almost 2 years.
Well, we do that every once in a while. I just recently, this was one thing I did in my studio after I was walking around after my surgery. I pulled out a box it said old art. I just opened it up and I think I threw half of it away. It was, or more than that. It was just who wants this? Nobody's ever going to want it, and I don't even want it. Why am I saving it? It kind of lightens the load.
But isn't it funny though, when you're actually looking for something, you find other things you'd forgotten about altogether, and they're much more interesting.
Yes, that can happen too. And those I
Terribly, terribly distracting when you're supposed to be at the drawing board doing a commission.
Well, it's called procrastination, right?
Yeah.
It's like balancing your checkbook or something. Yeah.
Sorry
Yeah.
to bother you, Louise, but I wanted
Yes.
to
Hi,
know
Dorothy.
where did you buy that powder, Yamato's powder?
It's not powder.
Oh, it isn't. Oh, I
It's
thought it was powder. I'm
no,
sorry.
no. It's oops. It's
Oh,
just gooey, kind of gluey
oh, it
stuff.
must be Nori goo. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. The powder was the wheat paste
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
used for Shinkole. And I suppose you could actually do that without a press too. Maybe the press really makes it stick.
Oh, I just wanted to let you know I'm teaching a paper embroidery class.
Oh, good. Good.
This is the third one I'm teaching because there's been a wait list on every one that I've taught.
Well, that's great. It's so much fun, and it's also contemplative, and it takes a long time. And I
Yes.
find that I would get lost in the process of doing it. I'd just be like, oh, where
And
did
I'm teaching it at the San Francisco Center for the Book.
Great. Great.
Great. Yeah, you've taught there many times for them, haven't you?
Yes. Thank you, Louise.
You are so creative, Louise.
Oh, thank
I
you.
just see you doing all these things that it's so inspiring. It just gives me so many ideas. Oh,
Oh, good.
Helene had
Helena.
Yeah, well, I don't really have a question. I just want to say thank you because it's really been inspiring, and
Oh, yay.
and I'm so honored that you were inspired by my work.
Yes,
That I really have to second Anna. That you're the inspiring one. So, but thank you,
well,
and I
yeah.
absolutely love your in illegible writing because it's just right up my alley. I just love it when it's not obvious at first sight what it says, and then you can look at it, for a while, and then all of a sudden maybe it sort of dawns on you, oh, that's what it says. Or maybe you will
Yeah.
just read something else, whatever you interpret, from what's there. But I just think I love it.
I love
So
it
thank
too.
you.
And thanks, Helena. Well, again, thank you for, like I said, you and Anna kind of were the catalyst for this happening. And really what I like about illegible writing is and I don't do as many what you'd call broadsides or wall art. But that's where I do like it illegible there. In books, many times that's where I'll put legible writing if I'm trying to say something that I've written, like you saw in one of those books. But I love it. And actually with that Johanna piece, which was interesting, this guy came up and he goes, I can't read it, but I can feel it. And I thought, wow, that's cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, but thank you guys, both you and Anna were.
Louise, one of the things that I noticed when you were showing the little film of the books with the cutouts, it almost looked like they were animated.
Oh,
because you would see the image behind the cutout, and then it would disappear, and then it would, something else. That really intrigued me. It's really, yeah.
That makes sense. And it's really kind of a dance to when you're doing that because I'd say, oh, I'll cut out here, but then I said, oh, but then I have to remember that where I'm cutting here is going to affect the previous page and the next page. And what do I want to do with that? Either the shape or what it's going to be. So it's really fun. I'm going to do more of that.
It's very effective. It was beautiful.
Okay.
It also reminded me of some of Rosie Kelly's books. Have you seen her books?
Oh, I have seen her books. Yeah,
beautiful.
It's amazing. Yeah. I got to meet her when I was teaching in where was I? In Chicago. That was not long before she passed. And She was wonderful. Loved her.
She was. I was able to take one of her pacemaking, uh, paste paper bookmaking
Mm.
workshops in Boston, and it was just fabulous.
Oh, I bet. I bet. Yeah. Margaret had something.
Oh, it's only another silly technical question. Those
Not silly.
little magnetic closures you had for the books fascinated me.
Well, I learned about those from Massimo. I had been using first I'd been using Velcro, but that I don't know, that just felt clumsy. And
Yeah.
then he turned us on to these really thin little magnetic thing. And again, guess where I got them? Amazon, but they were really well. The only thing you have to do with them that is tricky is they come with glue backing, so supposedly they hold something together, but with heavier paper they won't. So you have to put super glue on the back of this little teeny thing and then stick it together. And it's a little bit tricky to not get it all gooey, but it
Yeah.
does hold. And it's a nice closure. It's a really nice way to
Yeah.
close.
Well, it's neat, and it you don't see them, which is
Yeah.
even better. Well, I suppose that's neat. Yeah.
Yeah, and I use them when I make little portfolio boxes for my
Yeah.
books. I use them for the closures too, and they work really well. And they make them really thin, real like a 1/16 of an inch thin, so they don't bulk up the book.
Yeah, because that's the problem with Velcro when you get the two bits, and then you can so easily rip the paper when you're trying to get the damn things apart.
I know. And then sometimes they pop off, and they make noise. Yeah.
Don't like books to make noises, do we?
We want them quiet unless they're musical books, right?
That was great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Aunt Louise.
Well, thank everybody for being here, and thank you again for your questions. That makes it interesting for me too.
I just wanted to let everyone know that next week I'm going to be giving a lecture and demonstration for the Peruvian Calligraphy Society's 7th week of calligraphy. It's called the Séptima Semana de la Caligrafía. Next Friday, the 28th of November. It's an online demonstration. So if you're not too exhausted after Thanksgiving, you may want to see my presentation. And to sign up, you can go to the events page of the Asociación Peruana de Caligrafía, and I will put that in the chat and sign up for that. They'll send you a Zoom link, I assume. Let's see. Is that a link? That's not a link.
Will you be speaking Spanish?
No, I'm going to be speaking English.
That
My
would be a
Spanish
disaster.
my
No, he
Spanish
speaks
isn't
perfect
good enough for
Spanish.
that kind of thing. No,
No,
that
I
wouldn't
meant
work.
for us.
So it'll be in English. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Wait, I'm trying to send it to the meeting. Here we go. Did everyone get that? Yeah, there we go. And so you have to scroll down and look for my demonstration there. So anyway, that should be interesting. It's the first time I've been involved with them, but they were so kind to provide all the information about Claude Dietrich that was presented at the last Blackletter Brunch, I believe. So the next Blackletter Brunch will be on December 14th. Norwegian calligrapher and teacher Christopher Hannes will talk about his two books, Literally and ABC for Adults. And so that should be a very interesting presentation. And he's a fantastic calligrapher and teacher. So thanks everybody. And I'm I'm going to turn off the
Thank
recording.
you.
And I will see you